Brian does that, I will. There we go. Got it. I'll give my apologies that I saw some folks email to let us know who was attending on behalf of their organization or community board, but I didn't have a chance to note your names. So if you don't mind saying it, if I miss it, that would be great. So I'm going to start with our individual members. You can let us know here or hello. Andrea Scarborough.
Sorry, present.
Anita Chan.
Present.
Okay, Bilal Key.
Present. Sorry, present.
All right. Diane Song Yu. Gil Lopez. Janet Ferrara.
Present.
Jasmine McPherson. Jennifer Maldonado. Jenny Lynn. Angela Moore. Catherine Servino. Mac Lawrence.
Hello, how you doing? I'm here.
Rachel, I know is unavailable today. Richard Nunez Lawrence. Ruth Essa. I know you're here. I can see you. Okay, hello, Ruth. Susan Latham.
Here.
Toby Shepherd Block. Me, I'm here. Okay. Community Board 1, Antonella.
Here.
Hello. Community Board 2, Frank or Laura. Community Board 3, see Megan. Hello. Community Board 4,
Here.
Carol Mahalski.
I'm here.
Hello. Community Board 5, Walter E. Clayton.
Present.
Community Board 6, Alex Cohen with Katrina Schneiderman.
Heather Dimitriadis tonight for Katrina Schneiderman. She has been previously committed tonight.
Yes, yes, I did see your message.
Nice
Thank
to
you so
hear.
much.
That's okay. Have a good.
Community Board 7, James Servino. Community Board 8, Susan Cleary. Community Board 9. Community Board 10. Community Board 11. Community Board 12.
This is Reverend Thorbs. I'm here.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Community Board 13. Community Board 14. Moving on to our organizations. Shores, I had a note that Mary was the representative through July. Is that still true, Mary?
Yes, I'm present.
Okay, Guardians of Flushing Bay.
Hi, yes, here.
Okay, LIC Partnership.
Yeah, Charles, you.
Hi. Mr. T. Carding.
Present.
Ryan from
I'm here.
Queen's Botanical Garden. Queens Chamber of Commerce. Queens County Farm Museum. Sutphin Boulevard Bid. Tully Environmental. Waste Management. Okay. That concludes roll call.
Perfect. And then do we have quorum for tonight?
That will take one moment, please.
Okay, great. No problem. I'm going to drop this Google form in the chat. We're trying to update and make sure that we have everyone's the best email for, oh, here I can change my name too so that it's me. We're trying to make sure that we have the best email for everyone. Some folks are missing from, and some we just have the organizational email. So if you want to fill out this form, that'll just make it easier to communicate with folks, particularly between meetings, making sure that we're getting an email account that is yours and that you check regularly. So if you just want to fill that out, that would be super helpful.
And yes, we do have quorum.
Great, wonderful, thank you. So our first item of business before we move into a presentation from DSMY is approval of the July minutes. Is there a motion to approve those or any comments?
I motion, Bilal-Key, motion to accept the minutes.
Susan Latham seconds the motion.
Great, perfect. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? And any abstentions? Great, so the motion passes. Now I'm going to turn it over to DSMY for a presentation on curbside composting. I think I saw you here.
Yes, there's two of us here. Myself,
Great.
Nick Figaro, Assistant Director, Community Affairs, and my colleague, Andrew Hoyles, who's going to give the presentation on the composting program, is here as well. Andrew, do you need them to share, to allow you to share your screen?
Yeah, that would be great. I can share my
Let
screen.
me
I can just.
see. Yeah, I'll make you, I think making you a co-host is the easiest thing to do. Does that work?
Let's see.
Yes, and so to answer Susan's question really quickly, so we sent over a list of questions, which I think we're prioritizing, but if there's time, we can ask questions. Any questions we don't get, we can compile and send over. So writing in the chat works. Also holding till the end and asking live also works. Great.
Yeah, so usually when there's a lot of information, when we present, and I think sometimes some of the slides can answer a question that comes in a little bit. Nick and I are gonna definitely be on the call to answer all the questions that come after. You know, service starts next week for curbside composting in Queens. I'm sure folks have a lot of questions if they weren't able to get them answered when we began this campaign with all the outreach that we're doing. But yeah, I'm just going to run through some of the slides. And good evening, everyone. Also, just for formal introduction, Nick gave his title and where he's out of Community Affairs, and my title is the Senior Manager for Composting Outreach and Education. And I work at the Bureau of Recycling and Sustainability. And so, yeah, folks should be really aware curbside composting is coming to Queens. I was going to go over what the service is going to look like, talk about some of the setup and best practices, which I think is just useful and helpful for people who this is new to. You know, this is going to be rolling out to 5 new community boards that have never had curbside composting service prior to the pause of the service in 2020. And also just one slide on how Queens SWAB can help with the outreach efforts and with the participation that we're hoping to see from this type of a program. So first off, and I am hearing some echo. I don't know if that's mine. I'm hearing it in my ears. I don't know if, Ryan, if you can mute people or something like that. But first off, yeah, curbside composting service starting for those who are unaware if this is, they just walked into this chat. It's starting in Queens this October. Monday, October 3rd is the first service day. And it's going to include all single family homes, small apartment buildings, and multi-unit residential buildings throughout the 14 community boards of Queens. So if DSNY collects your material at the curb, we'll provide service for you. Some caveats with that, but we'll get to the question, but get that in the question and answer. But for majority of people in Queens, they'll be getting service from us starting next week. This is the weekly collection of leaf and yard waste, food scraps, and food soil paper. This material and turning it into compost or renewable energy. Participation is still voluntary. There are no fines at this time, but we're hoping people give it a try. We know that in Queens, there are plenty of green backyards. There are plenty of front yard spaces. There's lots of trees that have lots of leaf litter, lots of residents. There are 2.2 million Queens residents, so there's lots of food waste that can be diverted from the landfill. And this is really a key program to capturing a reusable material effectively, something that you can create compost with or create renewable energy with, and instead of diverting it to a landfill or sending it to a landfill instead. So service starts next week, first week of October. Compost collection is going to be on the same day as one's recycling day. So everybody could have a different recycling day on this meeting. So in fact, to find your recycling day, you can go to on.nyc.gov/collection day, or you can call 311. You can go to our DSNY website, nyc.gov/DSNY. There's a collection lookup tool right there. But if you want to remember one of the links, on.nyc.gov/collection day, you'll find which day is your recycling. So for folks who set out the recycling for your building already, that's important for you to know. But if you live in a high-rise building where your building management, your building super or a staff person sets the bin out at the curb, sets the waste out in the recycling at the curb, then you'll have to talk with them about ensuring that they know the day to set out the material for participation. One other big note, service, is that this is going to have a 3-month service pause right now for snow operations in late December, which will resume in March. The primary reason for that is we've understood it at the department with our new leadership is looking at a program that has had, if folks hear my toddler hitting doors because I'm in her bedroom, so apologies. Yeah, so folks who are aware of the history of curbside composting in New York, one of the issues that came up with curbside composting was the cost of it, right? So one thing to offset some of those costs is that during the 3-month service pause during snow operations, when the Department of Sanitation shifts its operations to manage all the snow, the cleaning operations that it entails, service will be paused and it will resume in March. Okay, so that's one big update for this program, but it will resume, and folks can continue to participate with all their spring leaf litter and all their spring waste, and also any food waste that they are going to be participating with the program. But with that, there's no other impact to regular trash or recycling collection service. There'll still be your collection day for refuse. You're at least 2 days a week, and you'll still have your other recycling materials will still be collected, your metal, glass, plastic, and cartons, and paper and cardboard. For folks who are also not aware, although I think a lot of people in this meeting are, food scraps, food soil, paper, and yard waste make up 1/3 of all the waste that's thrown out in New York. And that's really why this program tries to capture this sizable portion of the waste stream in New York City. We make compost, we make clean energy, We prevent rodents from having, the food, the putrescible waste captured and containerized effectively is what we're trying to do. So keeping litter and pests off of the streets to keep the neighborhood healthy and clean, and also to keep New York City healthy and resilient in a more ecological direction, which is what the department has been trying to do. This is just a current disposal network of organics, the map that our Bureau of Solid Waste Management provided. They're the ones who, at the Department of Sanitation, are responsible for, effectively managing the material and where it goes once it's been collected, right? And so in Queens, there's a transfer station, American Recycling, Seneca, that takes material from the trucks that will collect. And as of August, and it's, this map is still up to date, but it does change regularly based on the realities of what the processing facility that takes the material much further, once the material has left the transfer station. It depends on what those facilities are doing, but the majority of this material that would be collected in Queens right now, depending on the feed of it, would be taken to an anaerobic digester facility in Massachusetts.
People out, but he can
But
get
also
the
some of
card.
the material. Hello. I know
You got some brief interlude, but it's a good moment to let you know that we are hearing some gaps in your audio otherwise. So if there's any way to move a little closer, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. Sorry about that. Let me try and fix something.
And for our record keeping purposes, if you could maybe just repeat the last talking point.
Yeah, so I just turned off my Wi-Fi on my phone and trying to sorry, still at home. Yeah, not the best Wi-Fi setup. But one of the things that this map is showing solid waste management, the bureau that manages where material goes for the city once it's collected, shows that the Queens boroughs, at least the majority of Queens, material is going to American Recycling Seneca. And then portion of it is also going to Newtown Creek, where there's the wastewater treatment plant, the egg digesters that people have seen. So some material is being taken up state, to Massachusetts, where there's a facility that both has anaerobic digestion and composting. And then there's a facility in New York City that manages the material to turn it into renewable energy. As also current disposal network, why we say current is one of the things I mentioned is this can change. This changes a lot actually, based on the material that New York City has to manage in a regular time. Food scraps, food soil, paper, and yard waste are the same things that we manage when we are talking about curbside composting. So this hasn't changed at all for folks who are aware of it with the program, how it's existed before. And also, we're still using the same talking point, if it grows, it goes. Hamburgers do not grow, of course, but if it's a food product or food soil paper, something that you would consume, then we will take it. Also leaf and yard waste, grass clippings, fall leaves, branches, twigs, we will take those things as well. We do not take bathroom products. We do not take hygiene or diapers or personal care consumer products like that. It's not that those things are not compostable. I think that's something that comes up a lot of times. Well, yeah, you can compost certain things like that, but at the Department of Sanitation, we're really trying to focus this program on food scraps, food soil paper, and yard waste to try to engage the residents where they, and in an easy entry, essentially. We also don't want to take any recyclables, so things like metal, glass, plastic cartons, and clean paper and cardboard. So one to update program that is coming, which I think is pretty cool for Queens, is leaf and yard waste. We're allowing residents to separate from the trash and place it in the curb in a couple of different options we're giving them. Clear plastic bags are allowed. Paper lawn and leaf bags are allowed. Residents can also put their yard waste into the compost bin, the brown bin. And also they can use their, and this is the big new one thing, the big new thing here. You don't need to use one of our brown bins to participate in this program. You can use your own bin that you purchased online. If you already have a bin that has a lid, you can use that as well. We don't care. We just want to collect the material and see it on your recycling day. The same goes for, so that was for yard waste, but for food waste, we have the brown bin. So folks are familiar with the brown bin. It's the bin that has a latching lid. It has wheels. You know, it's brown and has the caduceus on the front and says food scraps and yard waste. We are giving these bins out right now automatically for buildings with 10 or more units. We deliver one starter bin to these households for them to give the program a try. For folks who already had the bins from previous rollouts in the program's history, they can continue to use that old bin. If they need a new bin, somebody needs a new bin, you can order one at nyc.gov/curbside composting. And there on that page, there's an order form. We're trying to deliver these before the start of service, before October 3rd. So it's really urgent that if you want a brown bin and you haven't ordered one yet, then you should put it in your order for it. If you do live in a building with 10 or more units, we have delivered already all of the starter bins that we are providing to those high-rise buildings. This point is it's really important that folks who live in those high-rise apartment buildings talk to their building manager, the building super, talk to them about where their brown bin is if it hasn't been made evidently clear that this is there, that service is starting. One of the things about previous iterations of this program, for instance, the last year's big push with the sign up was a lot of building managers, building supers, building staff were hesitant to sign on to the programs, but we're done with that signing up version of this program in Queens. So we just provide the tool, the brown bin, to participate. So for folks who want this service, they have to also be, DSNY is providing the service. We're going to drive the trucks down the street. There's the buildings have to make sure that their tenants are aware of how to participate. And with that, we provided a starter bin. Any bin with a secure lid can now be used in this program. So this bin here that's pictured with the decal on there, that would be allowed to place your food scraps. And you would go to nyc.gov/composting bin decal to find that decal, and you can order it online. We'll mail it to you for free, and you can affix that to your bin. So why are we doing this? Well, I think some people were thinking, well, okay, why do I have to get this bin, but then I missed the window? We're basically that's not really an excuse anymore to not have the tool to participate, right? So we're allowing folks to be able to use basically any bin with a secure lid to participate and to set out their food waste. There are lots of different types of bins folks could buy. There are types that you can buy on Amazon or on Home Depot or on any of these like big box kind of stores. You can also go to your local mom and pop hardware store, and as long as there's a bin that has a secure lid, you can purchase that, affix it with the decal, and then set it outside for collection. Participation in the program, we think it's very simple. It's separate your food scraps from your regular trash and your yard waste as well. Empty your food scraps and yard waste into your bin, and then set out for your recycling day the night before your recycling day.
Can you repeat that, because we broke up, and can you just go over 1 and 2 again? Like, does the food and do the food scraps and the yard waste go together in the same bin, or are they separated out separately?
Sure, yeah, and apologies for service breaking up here, but the question, like, how do you participate? And there's really no wrong way to participate. I'll just start there. Food waste and yard waste can be in the same bin so long as it has a secure lid. Okay, that could be our brown bin, that could be your own bin, but it's either is fine. If you want to separate out the two, then you would have to use food waste would have to be separated from yard waste by keeping food waste in a bin with a secure lid. And then yard waste could be in any bag, either a clear plastic bag, a paper lawn and leaf bag, or its own separate bin, which is shown in that picture here, yard waste only. And then for collection, because collection's on the recycling day, we're depicting this here, you know, the bin set out with the paper recycling and also with metal, glass, and plastic recycling. The bin is set out on that same day, the night before collection. So property managers, property owners, this part of the program, this is really new, as I was saying. The sign-up program caused some confusion and some frustration, I think, certainly to Queens residents, because Queens was one of the boroughs that did not get a district when we were trying to do the opt-in or sign-up program, but that's no longer the case. We have delivered, as I was saying, automatically one starter bin to building managers, or to high-rise buildings, any buildings over 10 units. When we delivered these bins, we provided also a building superintendent guide. And the building superintendent guide provides the best practices and the guides for composting when you have a large building and we have to manage waste for tenants. You know, still the tenant's responsibility to participate in any of the recycling programs that New York City has to offer. So for instance, the mandated recycling of metal, glass, plastic, and cartons and paper, that's their tenant's responsibility. It's not the super's responsibility to sort or anything like that. It's their responsibility to set up the waste stations for them and allow for them to participate. So we sent some signage where we're communicating when collection starts, which is recycling day, what can be put in the bin, how tenants can collect and store food waste, and where the bins are located. And furthermore, the department, we offer additional educational materials and signage in multiple languages. That those items are available on our website. We also offer virtual outreach to buildings, so tenant trainings, building staff training. We'll do site visits to talk to building staff and explain how this program works and how they participate. And residents or their building staff can go request one of these events by going to on.nyc.gov/event request. Some of those suggestions include, you know, determining the best location for bins. We think a lot of times an outdoor brown bin is probably best because that's how it mirrors the recycling bins depicted here. But also we've seen buildings that use trash rooms or they have recycling rooms in their buildings outside of their courtyard or other accessible spaces are also perfectly fine to use. There's no one type of high-rise building, but there are lots of different types of high-rise buildings. Again, we think of any building in New York that has more than 10 units as a high-rise. That includes buildings that have 10 to 25 units, 25 units to 100 units, 500 up to 500 units, 1,000 unit buildings. Like those are all high rises, and we gave them all one starter bin. So we're hoping that you know, with pressure from the tenants, they have the ability to participate. We also want to encourage that they get trained and reach out for those resources that are available to them that are how to participate in this program. Posting the educational signage wherever possible. Lining the bin with the clear bag helps reduce odors. It is not required at all. There's no requirement on lining the bins, but it does reduce the ick and the smell of food waste that could have an odor associated with it. And one other tip that we often give for buildings is writing your address on your bin, because if there's 10 buildings on your block and they all get collection, then when the sanitation worker puts that back, we want to make sure that you know it's your bin. Many misconceptions. This program attracts rats and other pests, but it doesn't. The bin helps to reduce rodent activity when it's used properly. I think that one big issue is that there's the misconception about this program being complicated. And I think we at the department have been really trying hard to get rid of this misconception, because I think people overthink it a lot of the times. They're really concerned that they're doing it wrong or that there's an issue or something. But what we're trying to communicate is that for organic waste, we will collect it, put it out for us. If it's yard waste only, put it in any bag or in a bin. If it's food waste, we do want to have it in a securely lidded bin. And that's what we're starting with. One other big misconception is that people associate backyard or at home active composting with this type of a program that is really containerizing waste to collect it. So people think no meat, no bones, no dairy, none of this, none of that. And those things aren't true for this program. The reality is these materials are going to, industrial scale composting or anaerobic digestion facilities. And all of our transfer stations that were shown on that map, they have at these facilities depackaging and equipment that basically grinds and breaks down any meat, bones, dairy, anything that's like more, any of the more dense material. And also it separates out any inorganic material so that you can have this more of a blended material for industrial composting processes or industrial anaerobic digestion processes. That's why there's this other misconception. You can't put plastic bags in there, and you certainly can. In fact, we're really trying to lower the barrier to entry by making sure people don't think that they're doing this wrong. If they're setting out the bin with food waste or yard waste in it, then they're doing it correctly, whether they're lining their bin or not. And I think one thing that some people think, like, well, we're using all the same trucks, my compost is just getting thrown out. And DSNY, we have to use the same fleet for all of our collection streams, but they're cleaned out between collections. Okay, so a recycling truck on Monday could be a refuse truck on Tuesday after it's dumped its material and has been cleaned out and it's been cycled back in. The trucks could all still look very much the same and maybe even have the same level of they could all use a cleaning. We clean the trucks after each shift, but they could still look like they could use a little TLC. One thing that so it's a lot of information. I'm going to open up to questions pretty quickly for me and Nick to talk about. One thing that we just shared on our social at the Department of Sanitation, and some of our partners are starting to share, are some of the things that folks can do to raise awareness and help push this program out, because this is a big push, and to grow participation to all the different New Yorkers. One really simple thing is share the graphics on social media and in your newsletters. We have some follow-up text or simple like text that you can include in your Twitter or your Facebook or your Instagram pages. We also want to make sure that folks know they can still place an order for a brown bin. I know just before the call there was a mention of Borough President Richard's event on Saturday. That's another great opportunity if somebody doesn't want to give out their email address, which we know that's a real thing that people don't want to do, or if they were one of the very few, but unfortunately there are sometimes bin thefts that happen, they can go pick up a bin at this location. Some of the brown bin distributions that we have. Or if they're just that eager and they just want to have the bin that this weekend, they can go pick up a bin, so that bin orders can still be placed, and we're still happy to host events with electeds or community partners where they can distribute these bins to their community members. We also give away paper on leaf bags and kitchen containers, which are for indoor collection of food waste, to try to support people's participation in the program. And we're happy to also promote these events with, for instance, the Queen SWAB, or with other, there's all the community boards on the meeting, and with all of the different types of events that we have. We think that these can be simple ways of attracting somebody who maybe isn't as aware of how composting happens or how to participate in these programs, just with a simple giveaway or distribution event. And then folks can assist with canvassing efforts in Queens. There's a lot in that, but basically one of our main outreach pushes for this campaign has been to knock on doors around the entire borough with the goal of hitting everyone, either with flyering, canvassing, and events, speaking at the community board, speaking at civic meetings, things like that. We have opportunities on makecompost.nyc/mastercomposter, and that's actually a way that folks who are interested in assisting with the canvassing efforts can join in. They can sign up for a volunteer shift, essentially, and work with one of our outreach partners who are doing a lot of outreach in Queens to talk to their neighbors, or talk to their neighbors in the wider sense, their Queens neighbors, about how to participate in the program and that the service is getting started. So me and Nick can certainly direct folks to more specific items, drilling down into each one of these 4 topics for how people can do these things. But we're certainly also always happy to present to an audience at a civic or community meeting, or to host an event and have our staff there distributing the items that people might want, like the free paper lawn leaf bag or kitchen container, to help them participate. There's lots of different ways, but those are just some of the most basic ways of getting involved, is really elevating this information to a level that can't be ignored by somebody who's maybe not thinking about composting. So this is really my presentation. Just wanted to run through these slides and then allow for questions. Nick and I received a list of questions. I hope I covered as many of them as I can, but also I know that there might be other ones that can be answered now. Thank you.
Just before the questions, Ryan, because there was a few people who asked about sharing the slide deck. Should we send it to you and you could share with the group? Is it easiest that way?
Yeah, that would be perfect. If you want to email me, I can send that around.
Okay, perfect.
So I've been collecting the questions from the chat, and I know Adam was looking at some of them from the list we sent over. A couple quick logistic questions before diving in. Just if people have ordered a bin and it hasn't arrived yet, I know that that's something we've heard in our outreach too. Is there anything people can do to check on status, or when should they expect bins?
Yeah, so probably our best bet for that is calling 311, and they'll direct you to our customer service line. Any bin orders that have been placed within the last 2 weeks should be done by now. So if you haven't received your bin and you place your order about 2 weeks ago, then I think that's a good opportunity to look, talk to your neighbors, see if there's a missed delivery. And I'm being just really honest, given how to most quickly get your bin. Or consider going to one of these bin distribution events to get a bin. But also, if you contact call 311 and try to talk with our customer service, they'll be able to direct your specific address and everything to me so I can look it up in our system. And I'll be able to see if the delivery has been made or not. We have a pretty detailed accounting system of all the bins that have been distributed, photos of the deliveries being made, what time of day, which vendor we had made the delivery, things like that.
Great, thank you. Next is kind of a couple questions on the folks who live in larger buildings. So if people have not heard from management, do you have you know, what should folks do if they live in a building and haven't heard anything about their building's participation?
Yeah, I guess to the question really what to do. I think that's important to understand. Department of Sanitation doesn't have a stick for participation. This is a voluntary program. But I'm saying that with the you know, to be trying to be supportive of folks who are in a building who do manage, who if they manage the waste at all on their sense, then they should just participate. I really think so. I think that would be lower the barrier completely. You know, if in these large buildings, they're the ones who are setting their material at the curb or in the recycling bins, then they should be the ones who are participating. If they are expecting that the program would sort of be more formalized in their building, then I think they would have a little bit more digging to talk to their building manager, building staff. So if you have any contact that's responsible for putting the waste out, then that's your first person to talk to. Certainly, I know for other buildings in the opt-in districts in the other boroughs, they've started, some people who are getting the shoulder from their building manager, they've taken on setting the bin out at the curb themselves. You can do that, right? But I guess I just want to be clear on that, like, what can Department of Sanitation do? We can provide the service, we can provide the bins, and we can, you know, certainly provide the encouragement and training and best practices for building managers and supers and trained tenants. But it is still a voluntary program.
Great, yeah, and that was one of the specific questions tonight. Was someone asked if they could just put their own bin out if they don't hear anything from building managers and supers. So that's good to hear. Another question from tonight and also from our community outreach was buildings that don't have curbside recycling, whether they are participating, and if so, how they can find the pickup dates.
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing in this question are privately, like buildings with private collection able to participate. And that's what I hear with the question, because there are a couple of these neighborhoods or communities in Queens, and they are not able to participate because DSNY doesn't provide their service. So for Breezy Point, for instance, in Queens, we would not be providing service there because DSNY does not provide any of its collection services there. And so for the other handful of other ones, that I'm not the best one to speak on all of them, but I do know that that's unfortunately not the current arrangement, as those sites opt for private collection.
Got it. Another kind of big question we have is metrics and like what sort of data points will be collected and whether that's something that we'll be able to look at any point and how frequently.
Data as in like how much material we're collecting?
Yeah, that as well as I know people are interested in like how many people are requesting bins. Are there areas that are not don't have as many pickups for, you know, particularly for us, if there are areas where people are not requesting bins or participating, like those would be areas that we could reach out to.
Yeah.
So like participation as well as amounts.
So, and maybe hopefully Nick can jump in on some of this as far as the data, but as far as regular data that we at the department collect, it's probably going to be in the tonnage, which we publicize on our website. You know, we do publicize the monthly tonnage, is the recycling and the refuse that's collected in every single district. month over month. As far as metrics associated with number of bin orders and maybe where the participations could be higher or lower, so those things, I think that would have to be like in conversations. I'm blanking if there's any type of publicization like that. Nick, do you think maybe
I know, like, obviously, Andrew, you broke up a little bit there at the end, but
the
obviously,
mayor's management report?
yeah, obviously we had shared information on like signups on our website. Obviously that's different information that actually is like seen from our end easier because you've just signed up on our actual form that we created. So I'm not 100% sure about bin orders, but certainly tonnage, and we can obviously see from tonnage numbers kind of make that sort of inference, Ryan, on like where participation is good and where it is bad and where we can focus our efforts. And obviously we'd love to have any assistance we can in trying to make inroads in some of those communities. We've been out door knocking. I was just out today in Flushing, we've been doing mailers door to door. We did in the beginning flyering at subway stops and every like major transportation hub throughout Queens, libraries, YMCA. So we've been really pushing, but obviously if participation in one area is low and we look at the tonnage numbers and we're like, hey, we can focus more, maybe it's a language barrier. We have the flyers in a ton of different languages, but maybe we need more speakers, or maybe we can make more inroads. We're happy to work with the SWAB in any way to we want this obviously to be as successful as possible.
Great. I see Mac, you've raised your hand, so I'll go ahead and call on you.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Nick. I did have a question about where the organics gets processed. I saw that map. It was very small though to read though, but I did notice that there was like a little blip in Q12 at American Recycling. So just kind of curious about that, where some of the organics is getting processed.
Just moved the rooms. Hopefully I'm a little bit more, hopefully I'd break up less. So on the disposal network map, those are the two locations that DSNY takes material for pre-processing through their depackaging equipment. So American Recycling, Seneca, in Q12, and then in Newtown Creek, the wastewater treatment plant in Greenpoint. The material from American Recycling, as of now, which changes based on contracts and then what the actual environment of what that facility looks like. If they're overrun, we might have to go to a new facility or something like that. That's going to Massachusetts, where there's a composting and anaerobic digestion processing facility called Pine Island Farms. It's in Sheffield, Massachusetts. And then the material at the Newtown Creek facility, that's a anaerobic digester wastewater, using wastewater plant, right? So that it's an anaerobic digestion facility, just where how the material essentially is diverted from landfill, is how the program.
Okay, and then is that now the organics that are being like held in Q12, are they coming from all over the city, or is it just all the Queens pickups of organics?
No. So in this map, if you're looking at the screen, you'll see the map of the different community boards around the city, and the material that's going to American Recycling are the Queens community boards that are shaded pink. So no other material would be going to American Recycling for composting, from curbside pickup to this location.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
One quick follow-up before I see Mary, you have your hand up. One of the questions is how processors will handle mixture of leaves with food, particularly Newtown Creek doesn't handle yard waste. So just
Yeah, it's a good question. Right, thus far, in talking with our connection, our contacts at solid waste management, it hasn't proven to be as big of an issue at this point. Now, I'll certainly follow up with this one, but this is a big question that I had myself. That yard waste, leaves, grass clippings, wood debris, that stuff is really bad for anaerobic digestion, and that material is really hinders good anaerobic digestion processes. But thus far, this hasn't been it hasn't actually impacted how our programs have fared. So we are still sending the material there. I will say one thing that's slightly different is with the Department of Sanitation's collection of leaf material from parks. We do send that material because it's collected at a park. We are able to capture that material and take it to our processing facility on Staten Island for processing. So we do actually capture a lot of the material that we do capture that is purely yard waste from parks locations. We divert it from these locations and take it to our processing facility on Staten Island, citywide in parks facilities. But that's because the material is pristinely leaf waste. It's not blended as everything that comes into these facilities is, because it goes through pre-processing. At every one of these facilities, there's a pre-processor that essentially decontaminates and blends all the material together for final processing.
great, thank you. So I have for hands, I have Mary and then Andrea. So Mary, if you want to go ahead. I think you're still muted if you're asking a question.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
There you go.
I have a question about how the material is going to be transported to Massachusetts by train or truck. And who the carriers would be, what railroads?
I can't answer that right now. I can reach out to solid waste management and get back to you.
Okay.
Nick,
Please.
I don't know if you have that answer.
I don't know that answer off the top of my head. I'd have to ask
Yeah, we have to follow up.
SWAB.
Because there's been a lot of problems with trains hauling municipal solid waste, punctured cans, deformed cans that don't seal. And it's in very old locomotives.
Great. Andrea, go ahead, unmute.
Yes, hi. Good evening. Thank you for the presentation. I'm kind of going back to Mac's question and American Recycling. And you mentioned the organics, right? Is going to American Recycling. Now, maybe I missed it, but will they be doing the actual composting there? Or is it just some form of processing and then the composting is done somewhere else?
Sorry, I'm on mute. Thanks for your question again. So I'm trying to move to the picture. Sometimes I'm like, why do we have this picture here? Because I think it gives off the wrong sense that in New York City, there are multiple compost processing facilities that are in operations, but there really are not. There are there are two facilities that the Department of Sanitation manages where there's processing of organic material to make finished compost, and then there are waste transfer stations that the Department of Sanitation and other entities can use to transfer that material that has been collected for further processing. So the location that was depicted in the waste transfer sort of network in New York that we use, that's actually just the pre-processing step. It's not actually a composting facility, to be short. Okay, the material is decontaminated there and moved from there to a compost processing facility or to an anaerobic digestion facility for further processing to be turned into the finished material. This picture here that we show, this is on Fresh Kills, where the truck is emptying yard waste and food waste and things like that. That's at our facility. And this photo, you can see it says SI1, that's Staten Island 1. That's why that we just, a lot of times we want to show people like, what does this process actually look like in real actuality? Well, the network of moving waste around the city, is the size and scale of New York City, requires that there are intermediate steps right now for the amount of waste that's managed with these types of programs. So to be quick with your question, no, it's not a processing facility where there's material composted. It's not a compost facility. It's a transfer station.
Okay, great. And just one last question. I do know the cutoff is October 1. As far as bins, to order bins, I don't quite understand why, if the idea is we want to grow and have as much participation as possible. And we're going to be doing outreach beyond October 3rd. So the option then is any folks that's interested cannot order a bin. They'll just have to go buy their own bin if they don't have one. I don't understand the idea as to why the cutoff is October 1.
No, that's a good question. We're really trying to push people to get their bin orders in. We've mailed everyone in the borough of Queens. We're actually mailing people twice, trying to hit every door. We want folks to understand that, like, the city of New York cannot buy a bin for every single resident of New York. I think it gets down to that. I mean, of course, I want everybody who wants a bin, and we all want everybody who wants a bin, to get one and order one. But I've been working on this program for close to 10 years, and we've always had this one talking point: the city can't always offer a bin for free, and that's really coming kind of true right now. And I hear you, because it's like, well, what if we want people to participate, we should give them the tools. And this is we're showing that there is a window right now, and there is a window, and folks should order the bin.
Yeah.
We're able to partner with electeds as well to hold givebacks and bin giveaways right now, and that could happen with the form being closed still.
Okay.
But what I think it's really important is this program. There's not and it's so much of an excuse, like, well, you don't have the bin, so you can't participate, right? You can use your own bin now, which actually that's a big change up. I think that will allow people who maybe did miss this window to participate.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Great. So we're coming close to time. So there's a few things from the chat, but if folks have questions that haven't been answered, definitely feel free to raise your hand. But there were a couple questions about the pause in collection, particularly whether that is anticipated to be an annual thing or just the first year. What that will look like in terms of getting people to start back up again. Just what's with the pause.
Yeah, I don't have too many details on the pause. I think folks who worked on it, on the program, we've all learned that it's a new take on this. But the city does manage snow, and the city is taking on this program to understand, like, there's a lot of yard waste, and yard waste as part of the one of the primary things to capture in this program won't be available as regularly in January, February, and March. So there's looking at an efficiency there, and looking at how the past program has worked, and trying to just build in more efficiency so that people can't attack this program on an inefficiency argument when we're making this program, attempting to make the program more efficient.
Great. Janet, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Ryan. So yeah, I just wanted to scale back on when you mentioned about the canvassing, like basically like going beyond social media, like just kind of having this like grassroots organized, going door to door, events, like how can we collect material? And also for those that have a smartphone, do you guys have like a QR code that we could use? That people could just, I don't want, I want to go paperless, there's, they don't want to like collect, they could just want to just rather scan or something, or versus just, oh, go to this website. Just think it's just something that's like a quick, very informative. So I don't know if you have something like that QR code and just a way where we could collect the materials to try to help organize like canvassing events.
Yeah, okay, no, yeah, there was a QR code, a tiny one on the back of the primary flyer that we have. That we were making sure that people knew about if they brought up QR codes, because we still know that people aren't always wanting a flyer. They don't want to have the physical thing, the paper. And then if people are trying to organize larger gatherings of canvassing or things like that in their community, then visiting NYC or makecompost.nyc is one way. You can also, I think, email me and Nick, and we can, if Queen SWAB wanted to try and organize something like that to try to just be growing the participation in certain neighborhoods, we loop them into some of the canvassing efforts that would be taking place, particularly with Big Reuse is able, they manage a lot of our volunteer activities for the Queen's expansion. So it would be alongside them for these efforts.
Okay, and so you're saying, and also, so we have like right now there is like canvassing going on right now.
Oh,
like
yeah, sorry, yes, there is. Yeah, Nick was out in the field
like
today.
Like which neighborhoods? I'm just curious, like what neighborhoods have been like really active about it, and really pushing, like whether it's like the western part of Queens or like where we would need like more traction, more like informative information, like east of Queens, southeast of Queens, like whatever.
Yeah, no,
any feedback on that too? You don't. And if you don't
no, we have multiple parties at DSNY conducting canvassing, multiple bureaus, both uniformed and civilian bureaus. We have our contracted outreach partners assisting with canvassing. We also have contracted vendors who work on canvassing, all working on this program in Queens. So we're touching all of the different neighborhoods. I think one thing that's important is 5 of these community boards in the city haven't participated in Queens yet, whereas the other 9 in Queens have. So we're trying to split as much evenly across all the different community boards, but we are trying to hit those neighborhoods that haven't ever had the service, because there is going to be that newness here. This isn't new for some of the areas, but it is new for some of the other ones. And but I will say, be honestly with you, like we've been all over the borough.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great. So maybe the question Anita posed can be our last one for tonight. And it's just, are there plans to cut back trash collection, since the goal is to divert compostable waste from the landfill stream? I think you're muted.
Hello?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, there we go. Okay, yeah, so plans to cut back service, there's not plans right now to do so. It's really, this program is looking to capture a material stream, a third of the waste, but we're not there yet to say like, okay, and starting next week, you're going to have one less trash collection service day or something like that. So not yet. And maybe that'll be the next thing that I'll be saying, like, you're not always going to be able to get a free bin. You're not always going to have multiple trash collection days. I don't know. I'm being a little tongue in cheek here, but no, at this point there's no plans to impact your regular trash or recycling service.
Great. Well, thank you so much. This has been great, and now look for the slides to send out afterwards.
Great. Well, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you for
And,
having us.
Appreciate it.
Great. So we are going to move on to our next item. Folks are welcome to stay. I know some folks from other SWABs joined. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but we won't be offended if you leave. So I'm going to turn it over to Susan Latham right now to talk about what the Solid Waste Planning Committee has been talking about in terms of what we as a SWAB want to do to promote this and organize our work around that. So I'll turn it over to you, Susan.
Hi, everyone. So I wanted to, the planning committee has been discussing the fact that curbside composting is coming to Queens. And given the fact, I mean, that it's almost here, but it's going to require extended and long-term educational efforts, we thought that it would make sense that we prioritize our immediate efforts on developing a short-term plan for how QSWAB can help to ensure the success of this pilot program and also be a relevant player in its implementation. So we drafted a plan, and I am going to share my screen with the hope that you guys can see it, and we'd like to talk about it. I want to note that a lot of the recommendations that are in this plan were outlined in the State of Waste in Queens report. And some of them are also included in the larger long-range plan that we've been working on with all of QSWAB's committees. And the planning committee wants to continue to work with QSWAB and the committees on finalizing the long-range plan in the coming months. And we'll definitely resume this work, but we feel like this is an urgent priority that really helps QSWAB achieve a major goal of composting, curbside composting. So we feel like we really should focus our efforts on that. So let me see if I can share my screen. Okay. So our goal is to get as many Queens residents to participate in Queens' pilot curbside composting program as possible, and thereby ensure its continuation and replication in other boroughs. And we came up with 4 or 5 basic goals. One is working with the Queensborough President's Office to help with outreach to different players. And that would be the executive committee that would be working on this. And before I continue, let me say, I'm reviewing all of these and we have a short amount of time, but all of these are open for discussion and change. This is simply something that we put together so that everybody can talk about it rather than starting from scratch. So all of this is a draft. So the first is, again, the executive committee working with the Queensborough President's Office to help with outreach to different players. And some of the things that we talked about were asking the borough president to connect us with Department of Sanitation to get their media package and ask for permission to share it widely. Obviously, we just learned that that has happened. Connecting QSWAB with the borough president's director of nonprofit relationships and community advisory board. Asking the borough president to get sanitation to assign a liaison for us to work with throughout the duration of the curbside compost pilot program and attend QSWAB meetings. And I see that we had someone here tonight. I don't know if that's our continued liaison or not, but our thought was it would help us to have one person that we can go to at Department of Sanitation rather than reaching out to different places. Also, identifying other ways that we can partner with the borough president. For example, having QSWAB quotes on his media releases and other messaging, appearing at events, etc. So this was the first goal for the executive committee. And before we move on to the others, Ryan, I don't know if there has been any movement on any of these.
Good question.
But I did
think so.
We got a bunch of their media package. We got a lot of tweets and other kinds of materials. So that's something.
Yeah,
the-
digital. We definitely have the digital. It would be great if we could get some printed material so we don't have to print it ourselves.
You know, also I'm thinking with the borough president having that bins giveaway initiative on Saturday, there may be others. So there may be opportunities for SWAB to connect with the borough president's office as to any other planned giveaways. We can then highlight that depending on the neighborhood, the area that's being targeted. So maybe that's something else we can do.
Okay.
Great. And Adam, I see you have your hand raised.
For the first part, liaison from DSNY, it's Joe Ottamanelli. And he's the one that we've been working with over the last 3-4 months when we have questions, and he arranged for the speakers to join us tonight. He's the DSNY community liaison for Queens.
Can you tell me the last name again, Adam?
Ottamanelli, so OTTOMANELLI.
Yeah, like the butcher in Woodside. Okay, great. So we have a couple of these that, you know, some of them are in place. The next one, and we had 3 other goals for, we drafted some things for the communication committee, for the education committee, for the legislative committee. Again, these are drafts. They're open to feedback and changing and editing. So for the communications committee, the goal was amplify the messaging from DSNY and other partners. Post information on the SWAB website with links to DSNY and other partners. SWAB and SWAB members share whatever information we have on social media. And all SWAB members share information with their networks and with community groups and businesses. So folks from the communication committee, do you have, or anyone else, do you have comments on this?
Yeah, so as of now, that's what we've been doing since the announcement has, you know, since it started, you know, build more awareness, and definitely amplifying. So yes, whether it's on Twitter, Facebook, you know, Instagram. But what I, you know, just from the question I asked earlier to Andrew, like just, I feel like there's also something about just also being the, you know, in person beyond virtual that we could communicate, and, you know, hoping that these events happen, whether it's the community boards or just any like local, like the Queens Farm. We just recently had, you know, that outreach there a few weeks ago. So, you know, that's also another focus thing. There's something about just like in person, you know, talking to people, just, you know, whether it's canvassing. So yeah, this is something we're already definitely doing. And there's also collecting upcoming events for October, but I'll talk that on my on my end.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm also,
I-
sorry.
Yeah, I agree with Janet that live, you know, that one-on-one conversations, maybe possibly looking at for community folks, members of our board, that they are also part of other organizations or a civic, making sure that the civic invite DSNY to come out and to speak on, possibly having a town hall. So this way you reach more folks.
And I think, Andrea, you're going to see that in the next 2 goals.
Oh, okay.
Because
Got
we
it.
have that in there. And I'm also just going to say that Queens Public Library is going to be sending out all kinds of, doing a lot of social media and sending, printing flyers to have at all of our libraries, and sending emails out to our 1 million customers about this. So spreads the word in that way.
Amazing.
The next is for the Education Committee. It was educate local communities about curbside composting. Hold educational presentations at meetings of all community boards in Queens, and ask the community boards to share information with civic and local organizations in bids. So a lot of what we were trying to do with this plan was to make things that are feasible, since we don't have paid staff and we have limited resources. Rather than us trying to reach out to every local community group, we thought getting the community boards, which have lists of all of the various civic organizations to do that, would be a way of us helping to amplify without actually trying to do all of that on our own. And you're going to see we have other, in the next goal that's going to come after this, doing the same thing with elected officials. The other goal or the other strategy was to share information on local websites, nextdoor.com, etc. So any comments about that one? And I mean, the other thing I can do is, I know that there was a comment about having DSNY presented a lot of these places. So hold educational presentations at meetings of all community boards in Queens, which is since we have representatives from all the community boards in Queens here on SWAB, the hope is that each of you would be able to go back to your community boards and then either see if we can reach out to Joe Ottamanelli or someone at the local community board level, possibly to have DSNY make that presentation. Because that's a smart idea, is to get DSNY to do it.
Susan, I think some of the CBs, they may have already done that. They may have already, I know my CB, and she's on CB12. They did have Disney. I think they did.
And that's great, because we want all of this to happen. And some of it is, I mean, a lot of it I think is already in the works, especially when we get to the next section here. But we put it down a month ago or several weeks ago as our plan. And I think we're seeing that a lot of it is happening already. The last goal was work with elected officials on this pilot project, the legislative committee. Provide the DSNY flyer to all electeds, the Queensborough president, city council, and educate them on the importance of the pilot program, encourage them to promote via their email lists. I think this is happening. I certainly have gotten information from my council member, and I'm sure the rest of you have as well. But we can certainly reach out to our electeds on behalf of SWAB and just encourage them to continue to spread the word, so that at least SWAB's voice in some way is is part of the conversation. Monitor the legislation for this bill and keep SWAB apprised of advocacy opportunities. And I think the advocacy opportunities would be to expand it and make it mandatory at some point and expand it to the other boroughs. Are the areas I think we'd be advocating on. And then when opportunities arise, work in coalition with other SWABs on advocacy. And I know that there was a comment about bin giveaways, right? And so maybe we could add an additional goal, which is work with electeds, at events with bin giveaways. Etc., to do personal one-on-one outreach. Does that make sense to people? That's what we were talking about, I think, under executive committee, with identify ways that we can partner with the Queensborough president, bin giveaways, etc. And there was discussion about other electeds, and that's what this last goal is about, is all of our electeds in Queens.
I like it, Susan. It's good.
Do people have other things? And again, I realize our time is really short. Are there other things that we've left out that should be in here?
This seems like a lot. You know, it's enough.
And it is a lot, but again, really what we're trying to do is we're trying to just feed into all of the other entities that exist so that we don't have to make new flyers. We can just connect and spread the word that DSNY has already. But I think it's also going to be important for us as a relatively newly reinvigorated SWAB to get our voice in there as part of this whole rollout. And this would be a way that we could do that.
Yeah, I agree. It's a lot, but there's a lot at stake here. all eyes is on Queens and what happens with this rollout. Does it succeed or does it not? If it succeeds, we are looking at a rollout through New York City because it puts pressure on the administration to roll this out to New York City at large. So this is why we're putting forward the effort. It's worth it. You know, at least for me, I think it's worth it. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but a lot's at stake. So, you know, let's try and do our part.
It also, I think, gives focus while we work on the longer term plan about some immediate things that the executive committee, the communication committee, the education committee, and the legislative committee can do. It's all about composting committee, which was one of our committees as well. But since the entire thing is about composting, these were the committees that we looked at and tried to develop this for. So are there any other questions or comments about this plan? And if there are not, Ryan, like, should we try to approve this plan, that this is what the plan is that we want to move forward with for the next several months?
Yeah, I think we could do that.
Do we have quorum?
We do.
Okay.
So since I am not on the executive committee, I'm going to make a motion that the Queens Solid Waste Advisory Board adopt this plan to help move and amplify the message about the curbside composting in Queens initiative that's starting on October 3rd.
Great. So
Anybody
I heard a
want-
motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, Mary Arnold.
Great. That's a second. Is there any discussion beyond what we've already had? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed?
Pass the backhand of Escobar and down the line, chased by Canna.
Unbelievable.
And is there any abstentions?
Backhand down and Juan has a leadoff double.
Ruth, is that an abstention or a question?
It's more of a question, sorry.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I just, I don't know if I missed this at any point. There's been a lot going on, I know, with the emails, but I just wanted to just play a little devil's advocate here because, you know, like before the pandemic where they suspended, like, you know, compost collection, there was a lot of work being done. There's a lot of volunteers, a lot of outreach programming that people do on their own spare time. And they're asking us to do this again. And I know we're willing to do this because, you know, never have they done this on any borough before, but it's a lot of work. And I don't know if it was discussed, is this going to be like a truly long-term budgeted program? Because what if this is asked of, like, you know, the Queens residents? And I find it very confusing, to be honest, for people if you're going to tell them, okay, like you get them all excited and now there's a 3-month, you know, they're going to do this. And then I'm very interested to know if we could tour the other facilities. I've been to Fresh Kills, the composting, and I know what they can create. I don't know what happens to the waste that goes to, you know, the other sites. So has that been asked? You know, can we find out more about the facilities? I know Andrea asked about the specific one in Queens, and it's just they don't do anything there. They place it there and it goes to another point. But I'd like to know more about where it goes exactly. That's all I have to say. Like, I agree with the outreach and it's important, but, you know, I'm very hesitant about promoting something where it's just going to be discouraged again and it's going to be out of a budget. It's a waste of time.
I think I'm just going to respond that I can't answer the second question, but the first is that this is a pilot. And my understanding is that it's being watched because if it is successful, then it's going to be replicated in the city, because the city has to find, or throughout all the boroughs, because New York City has to identify ways that it can reduce what's going into the landfills. And so this, it was a surprise, and I think it was a really good surprise. And it's interesting to see if they make it non-mandatory, how many people will opt in. And so I think it's to, I think it's to our benefit to try to promote it as much as possible to get as much buy-in, because because I think that its replication in other boroughs is really going to depend on the success of this pilot program. And I would imagine if they've spent all this money now on, and they're trying to do it, I mean, there's a will for them to try it out. And so they're coming up with different ways about trying to get people to buy into it. And what I mean, one of the questions is going to be, when is it going to become mandatory? Because I think that will be the next step, is that it will become mandatory.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Ruth, I think I know my board was not one of the boards that had it the last time. But from what I could see, or what I mean, there wasn't really a whole heck of a lot of outreach. It was like, okay, the bins showed up, maybe in some communities, but there really was not. And not like this go round. I mean, you could actually see the effort. Door to door. I mean, me getting a flyer at my door, and then on top of that, mass mailing, you can actually see they're doing the work, which means they want this to succeed. And I get what you're saying. You don't want to buy into something that's going to fail, but it only fails if we don't get out there and try to make it to succeed. So, you know, we're doing the work. They're working with us. Disney's working with us. So they wanted to succeed also. I think this is our best shot. And if we blow this one, we may not have a second, you know, we may not get another shot for a while. So let's buy into it. Let's do what we have to do. I mean, I reached out to all the civics in my area and made sure Disney was at their meeting. That's the kind of stuff you have to do. The borough president is having a bins giveaway. It's close enough. I did mass email send out, letting folks know if you don't have a bin, you know, to come. We can't, there's no room for failure this go round. We need to work to try to make sure that it succeeds so that this can go citywide and we keep composting.
Great, thank you. I see Vanessa's hand really quick. Just to say that there's a bill before City Council that was introduced before this and has not been retracted for mandatory citywide curbside composting. So while we are working with this program, I think part of the plan is to also keep track of that. And if there's advocacy around, because what I've heard for in terms of mandatory is exactly what you're talking about, Ruth, with this being kind of a program that DSNY is doing instead of a you know, line item budgeted thing from City Council. So that's something that is still before City Council, and so there's room for us to work with that as well. So Vanessa.
I just wanted to add to Ruth's point that, so we do, as the Queens Solid Waste Advisory Board, have the ear of the borough president. We are the Queens Borough President's Advisory Board. So we can both make sure that those concerns, that healthy skepticism, is heard by the borough president as often as needed, while we also support programs that we believe are in the interest of our vision and mission. So we don't need to let our concerns go to the wayside while we support this program. We can make sure they're heard as well.
Thank you. Yeah.
Great. So I think that I don't know what to do with voting at this point. I think we were at abstentions. Ruth, would you like to abstain or vote no?
Oh, Yeah, it wasn't an abstention. I just wanted to clarify. It
Great.
was just a
Okay.
question. Yep.
Perfect. Okay. Great. Thank you for that. And so I think that passed. I didn't hear any no votes. And I think we can pass this off to committees as well. And so our coming committee meetings in October can dive deeper into this. I know we're at 8:05. If folks can stay on for just a few more minutes, that would be great. The other committee chairs have a few things to add, particularly with that last point Susan was talking about. Mary, do you want to talk about what the legislative committee has for folks?
Sure. So there was a link to the minutes of the September Legislative Committee in the agenda, and I'm just going to focus on action items, including the ones that we just talked about. So this item is that the Legislative Committee has drafted 2 emails to elected officials, one that we hope will come from you and the other that would come directly from the SWAB. And in the emails, we're asking all elected officials in Queens to express their support for the curbside composting pilot and include their support and perhaps the DSNY flyer in their constituent communications, newsletters, and events. And then we could add in the letters what Susan suggested, that perhaps they could do a bin giveaway event and then maybe publicize that. So Ryan has copies of those if you wanted to put those up, Ryan. And while he's doing that, because I think, well, we've already voted, but one of them has the logo, and I think we're supposed to vote on things with the logo. But every member is supposed to join a committee. So I'm hoping that we might have some additional members at our October 13th committee. And that link to register was in the agenda too. So I just wanted to make a plug for that. So this is the letter that would have the SWAB logo. And I don't know, it's kind of small on my screen. My eyes are kind of bad. So yeah, okay, thanks, Ryan. So does anyone, I'm not going to read it to you, you can read it yourself, but do you have any questions or additions or anything about this that you would like to see changed? Because this would be coming from Ryan. And then my thought was that as the legislative committee chair, we would ask the elected officials if they needed any support. And, in the event that anybody did, I would collect those and then pass them on to Ryan, basically. Any comments?
I feel it's
have a
very
comment.
sweet and to the point.
Okay. Okay.
I think I have a question.
Okay.
I know in this letter you said that it can reduce taxpayer costs for waste export. Is that true? Is that necessarily true? Because I remember sitting in on a presentation and a couple of years ago and exporting, or we were actually paying farms upstate to take our waste, our organic compound, our organics, and it was pretty costly.
Yeah, I mean, not if they're going to take it by truck to Massachusetts or by, yeah, I hear you.
Well,
We have to make sure that
change it from can to may.
Sorry, go ahead.
Change it from can to may. This may reduce taxpayer costs as opposed to can.
Right. I think that would be judicious given what we heard, right?
I'd advocate to have the communication go to the Queen SWAB email address, just so that we have a keep that solid communication voice going through there.
Okay, but then the question is, I don't have access to that. Like, who picks that up? Who's going to do the work? I'm willing to do the work. I mean, if I could get access to it, that does sound like the right answer. The reason I put this in is just because that's an email I know I have access to. I don't want to give somebody else a job.
I bet the recipients of the Queen SWAB email could forward them to you when they come through.
I can confirm that.
Okay, that's great then.
Great start, Mary, for moving this forward. Thank you.
Okay, and then could we see the other email, which is shorter, which is the suggested one for, I mean, you guys are perfectly capable of writing your own emails, but you know, this would come from you to your elected officials, and Ryan has kindly come up with a list, which we hope that if people have better information, you might fill in like what your better information is. And these would be.
Great,
This
this is just quickly the
right.
the context. So the idea is that, you know, all of your elected officials, you would be sent, I mean, we'll send it, but it's often more powerful for actual constituents. So we'll send this around as well, but that's just what, this is now in the way. Great.
Right, so you'll be getting an email, watch for an email, which will come to you, which will have this, it'll have the DSNY materials, and it'll have that list in it. And then please do some outreach. And you know best what you should say in there to the various elected officials, but this is a, you know, and we'll change it to may instead of can.
Looks good.
Great. So we can stop that share. Was there anything else, Mary, or is that?
No, I think that
Okay.
was the major thing. So we'll get that done.
Perfect. So I'll open it up. I don't see Jenny. Jenny said that she might make it, might not. Just the focus is very much in line with the plan that we had laid out. Let me mute. I don't know who's, I'm getting some echo. Let me try. Okay, so I'll put up a list of when all the committees were meeting. The education committee just had met before, and they were talking about how to get information out about the curbside composting program. But I'll start communications. Is there anything you want to report out? There's a link to the notes in the agenda, but if there's anything you want to highlight.
Yeah, so I actually sent it in the chat, just like one of the big highlights.
Oh,
I
right,
definitely
yes.
want to amplify when it, just like about 3 days ago or so, the Queensborough president, he wants to know where you think like the new trees should be planted in Queens. This is particular because to combat climate change, but also, you know, with like focusing like the hot zones, like, you know, College Point, Southeast Queens. So they're going to have priority of getting more trees. It's about like $100,000 that they have money to plant a tree initiative throughout the borough, which is great. And I did add the news article, just if you want to get more information, and also the link to, well, let me see if that link worked. I'm sending that, I could resend in. I also send in the Google group, but a link if you feel like your neighborhood needs a tree, you know, more shade, more tree, more cooling, you could definitely sign up. And they're very, you know, particular, like where. This is not just like, oh, we need it in Astoria, or we need it, like definitely giving the address, the intersection, where it should be planted. And I believe this will be from now through Tuesday, October 18th, and residents can submit their suggestions for the tree planting site by filling out the form. So that's just one of the things I wanted to highlight. And then there are some upcoming like e-waste recycling events that will be posted on our platforms in Little Neck and Woodhaven area. And then there's one quick thing. I know we're like over time, but just I need to mention in our meeting, she brought up a good point about like how we've been communicating through emails and just to be more concise. I know like there's members that are very, like just to shout you guys out, Mary, Adam, like you guys sent like great information and just ways we could like help, kind of solidify it and like maybe like, incorporate maybe as part of like our newsletter or just a way to kind of gather like a visual and informative messaging or just something. But we could definitely talk about that in the next meeting just to get a little bit on a deeper dive. And just an additional note, I attended a zero waste event like last week or so, and I connected with Hillary Bosch. She's the community coordinator from the composting outreach and education at DSNY. It was so much great information. I'm trying to find ways I could just compile all the information that she said. She really broke everything down and things that kind of went beyond the composting program. So would love to like, have her as like a future panelist. Also, Marcel Howard, who's a policy analyst and coordinator at Upstream Solutions, just kind of throwing that out there as well. But yeah, hopefully that was quick. And,
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then Bilal, if you want to talk about environmental justice.
Yes, good evening. I'll be very brief. Thank you, Ryan, Chair, for chairing this meeting. Welcome back, everyone, to the new fiscal year. So it's great to see everyone here in the space. As we know, we're kicking off a new fiscal year, and the Environmental Justice Committee is always looking for more help, and we need more help. So anyone is interested in serving on the EJ committee, which is still tied to the efforts that we're talking about with composting and making sure that program's successful, but also equitable across the communities that haven't seen composting before and never received composting before. And also the DEC, the Disadvantaged Communities Map for Climate Change, which we worked on testimony towards the end of last fiscal year. Still have that still on the plate. That's still on the agenda. That's not going nowhere. It is expected that the state will report out in this sometime in the end of this, before the end of this year, probably around December, in reference to the recommendations that were put towards them in reference to correcting the map and making adjustments to the map. But that's not going nowhere anytime soon. I've been in contact with the DEC's Environmental Justice Chair. They have expressed interest in coming to present to us on this topic, on this issue. And I know that the Bar Association for New York City Environmental Law has put forth back in August a call out to the state to add more environmental justice groups from downstate here in the city to that advisory council. And that will CC to the mayor and a couple of other people as well for their support. But yes, I will send out an email to everyone. You can contact me directly via email if you're interested in serving in the Environmental Justice Committee, as we want to make sure that this committee is a viable committee and is as equally as important as the other committees. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you, as Mary mentioned in the chat, all members are supposed to be working on a committee. So if you are not, there are lots of opportunities to plug in. Thank you everyone for sticking around after our meeting time. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Janet, motion to adjourn.
Okay.
A second.
Second, great. Perfect. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Good night. Bye-bye.
Night.